Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're peeling back the layers on something that feels so universal yet.
Hmm.
It often remains kind of invisible. We're
Hmm.
talking about those powerful internalized pressures that can really sabotage a woman's sense of self and, her purpose.
That's so true.
And we're not just talking about external things like glass ceilings. We're diving into the psychological and, I guess, the spiritual burdens that are held so deeply.
That's right. Our sources today take a really rigorous look at this landscape. And they argue that, despite all the strides we've made toward gender equity,
Yeah.
these hidden pressures, they persist. They continue to dictate worth and just drive this chronic exhaustion.
Okay, so our mission today is all about getting clarity, surgical clarity. We're using this material as a map to identify and really unpack what the sources call the three hidden pressures.
Right.
Because awareness, in this context, it feels like it's more than half the battle. It's really that crucial first step. You just can't fight what you can't name.
Exactly. We have to move beyond just saying, oh, it's a struggle. We have to actually name the systemic expectations that are at play here.
Yeah.
And by understanding the roots, psychological, social, spiritual, that's how we unlock the path to finding, an unconditional sense of self-worth.
Let's jump right in then.
Yeah.
Pressure number one. This is one we see every single day, and yet its psychological cost is, it's so often overlooked. The pressure of unrealistic body ideals.
The sources define this as a constant, an unrelenting psychological drain. The core issue isn't just advertising,
Right.
It's the whole cultural infrastructure. Media, social platforms, even the casual conversations we have, they all promote these impossible and really hyper-specific beauty standards.
And these standards, they demand this kind of perpetual perfection. It's like the female body is treated not as a living thing, but as a project.
A project that's perpetually under construction and critique.
So when you internalize that, when you start seeing your own body as this project that needs constant fixing, what's the direct psychological consequence? What do the studies actually show?
Oh, it's devastating. It really is. The central consequence is the erosion of self-worth.
Right.
Because when your worth is tethered to some unattainable physical benchmark, it just feeds directly into these cycles of self-criticism and debilitating perfectionism. We see anxiety spikes around appearance, a fear of judgment, and just chronic comparison.
And it's so important to stress, this isn't just a Western thing, is it?
Right.
We pulled some data that really speaks to the global scale of this distress.
Absolutely. International research, including these huge global health and well-being surveys, they consistently show widespread body dissatisfaction. And this is across diverse cultures, different socioeconomic levels.
So it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. In the psychological literature, it confirms that these body perception issues are so tightly connected to our overall psychological well-being. The risks are very real. We're talking heightened risks of disordered eating, body dysmorphia. It's a crisis that's rooted in feeling fundamentally inadequate.
That is a harsh reality.
Yeah.
The culture tells women their bodies are problems that need to be fixed.
too.
But the spiritual framework in our material, it offers this profound counter-narrative. It reframes the whole issue.
It does. And the key concept is shifting your perspective from, say, measurement and critique to stewardship and gratitude.
Okay.
This specific spiritual tradition sees the body not as a project, but as a sacred gift. Its purpose isn't to be perfected on the outside, but to be a vessel for love and purpose in the world.
But how do you actually do that? How do you reconcile that internal shift with the very real billion-dollar diet and beauty industries bombarding us every day? How does seeing the body as a vessel translate into real, actionable psychological resistance?
That is the critical juncture. And the sources stress that this reframe, it have to lead to action. And it starts with unconditional acceptance. They offer a very memorable phrase to sort of anchor this idea, and it's from St. Teresa of Avila.
Okay.
She says, "Christ has no body now but yours."
Wow.
The power in that statement is that it defines the body by its inherent purpose to carry out acts of love, of kindness, rather than by its measurements. The path to healing is recognizing it as a vehicle, a gift, and focusing less on control and more on compassionate use.
That distinction from control and perfection to compassion and purpose, that is so powerful. It really requires letting go of the external metrics we've all been conditioned to chase.
It defines worth internally. It completely disconnects it from appearance.
Now let's pivot, because the energy that's used up worrying about the body often feeds directly into our next huge time sink.
Yeah.
Pressure number 2, the caretaker overload.
Yes.
This relentless pressure to put everyone else's needs first, which just leads to systemic exhaustion.
And this pressure is so insidious because it's often masked by positive words like nurturing or selfless, right?
Right.
Society subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, establishes this expectation that women will just take on the emotional labor, all the planning, the remembering, the anticipating for everyone in their orbit.
At home, in the family, at work.
Everywhere.
It sounds like the second shift problem, or what some sociologists are now calling default parent syndrome,
Precisely. We should use those terms.
where the responsibility for all the household logistics and the emotional temperature of the family, it just defaults to the woman, no matter what her professional life looks like.
And this relentless prioritizing of others leads directly to exhaustion, to chronic overwhelm. And here's the irony you brought up earlier. Society often praises this.
Yes, you're lauded as a hero, a martyr, but that praise comes at such a high cost of genuine self-neglect.
It does.
And the psychological cost of just running on empty is so severe. Burnout, anxiety, resentment, they eventually take root. So if this sacrifice is culturally revered, where does the wisdom of the spiritual framework step in?
Yeah.
How does it offer a counterbalance?
It steps in by reframing what service even is. Service is honored, of course, but the spiritual wisdom emphasizes the absolute, non-negotiable importance of rest, of renewal.
Right.
The source material is very practical here. It points out that even the perfect example of service, Christ, deliberately sought out quiet, solitary places to pray and just recharge.
So if the model of selflessness himself required boundary setting and withdrawal, then trying to serve without rest is just.
Yes.
It's fundamentally unsustainable. It's destructive.
It is. The distinction is between sustainable service and self-destructive martyrdom.
I see.
So the practical application requires this fundamental shift. Setting boundaries, practicing self-care, that is not selfishness. It's an affirmation of a woman's inherent dignity. It's honoring the very life that's been entrusted to her.
So instead of seeing a moment of rest as a luxury or maybe a failure to serve, it becomes a necessity, spiritual and psychological maintenance.
Exactly. Spiritual strength, according to this material, it grows when service is balanced with self-compassion. A boundary is an act of acknowledging your own worth. It's making sure your cup is full enough so that your actions are driven by genuine love and not by some empty obligation or guilt.
That's a necessary reframing, moving service from obligation to a balanced choice. Okay, let's shift now to the third hidden pressure. This one is particularly acute in professional and academic settings. Pressure number 3, perfectionism and the professional tightrope.
This third pressure describes that extremely narrow path women often feel like they have to walk.
Right.
On one side, you have this intense, internalized push to excel, to achieve, to demonstrate perfection, often coming from this anxiety about being underestimated.
Yeah.
But on the other side, there's a very distinct caution against being too ambitious or too assertive or too aggressive.
It's the dual bind. You have to perform flawlessly, but you also have to stay nurturing and accessible and likable.
Yes.
If you fail to be nurturing, you risk being penalized for lacking social skills. But if you fail to perform flawlessly, you just confirm the underlying bias that you weren't up to the task in the first place.
And trying to navigate that tightrope 24/7 is just, roar. It's a recipe for chronic anxiety, for self-doubt. The striving for perfection in this context, it's almost never about genuine excellence. It's about chasing external approval.
It's about managing what other people might think.
Exactly. And because the metrics for that approval are constantly shifting, be excellent, but be quiet about it. You're just constantly running a race that has no finish line.
So how does this constant performance anxiety contrast with the deeper, more internal definition of purpose that the source material is advocating for?
Well, the contrast is between that external performance and a kind of internal calling. Chasing external success or approval, it just leaves you vulnerable and exhausted. The deeper spiritual call is to seek one's purpose that is rooted internally in faith, or in an intrinsic sense of self.
Rather than in the ever-changing demands of the world.
Right. When your worth is rooted internally, that tightrope, it becomes irrelevant.
So the goal is authentic living, moving from external expectation to internal purpose. What's the difficult practical step you have to take to make that transition?
The difficult step is discarding those external expectations. Authentic living requires the courage to silence the clamor of the world and the inner critic that voices those demands.
That's the hard part.
It is. The sources emphasize that this requires a deliberate, maybe faith-filled commitment to listening to the voice within, the voice of courage and truth, even if it means disappointing some external expectations. It means defining success on your own terms.
That ties all three of these insidious pressures together so perfectly. Let's move to synthesis and connect the dots here.
Okay. So if we look across all three pressures, body ideals, the caretaker overload, and this perfectionism tightrope, the unifying thread is pretty clear, isn't it?
Yeah.
They all hold women back by dictating worth based on external conditional factors. Your worth depends on how you look, on your deeds, or on the approval you get.
In effect, society sets up this conditional contract. You are valuable if your body is optimized. If you successfully manage everyone else's needs, and if you achieve perfection without ever ruffling a feather.
Precisely. And the core message for freedom here is that transformation begins with awareness, with the courage to recognize and name and then reject these conditional contracts.
Right.
Naming the pressure allows you to change the struggle from this vague, debilitating feeling of inadequacy into a manageable external challenge that you can actually start to dismantle.
And the deep work here isn't really about doing more, is it? It's about being more securely anchored.
Absolutely. Psycho-spiritual growth, according to this material, means finding your worth not in what you do or how you look, but simply in being.
That establishes an unconditional baseline of worth.
Yes. The sources frame this as embracing the truth of your inherent dignity. So the journey to wholeness, it requires grace for all the inevitable imperfections, and just honesty about the pressures you're navigating.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. We've unpacked the unrealistic body ideals, the exhaustion, the caretaker overload, and that paralyzing anxiety of perfectionism and the professional tightrope. The core lesson here seems to be that our worth is non-negotiable. It's internal.
Right. And we want to leave you with this final provocative thought to maybe mull over this week. It connects all the themes.
We do.
Body, boundaries, and worth.
Okay.
If your body is truly a sacred gift, a vessel for love and kindness, what is one single deliberate act of self-care or boundary setting you can implement this week that honors that gift, instead of treating it like a project that needs to be fixed or measured or perpetually drained? Let that question guide your next choice toward balance and unconditional self-compassion.